Welcome to this second video where I'm looking at making a clock with a photo frame integrated into it, but I'm going to be making this new one for my dog here, Milu, on some cedar veneered MDF. So I finished last time with this CAD file mapping out the basic idea in terms of the proportions of my design. So I have my dimensions working out how big my product should be, but I noticed that some of these dimensions were slightly off because I moved things around a little bit last time and I didn't update the dimensions. So I'm going to select this top dimension here, which was the full width of the product, and you'll notice here that this no longer relates to the actual edge of my design. So I'm just going to select that. I'm going to bring it in just as 5mm, and notice that that dimension changes from 290 to 285, which is now correct. And I also noticed as well that I'd moved my clock 5mm to the right, but I hadn't updated the dimension line here, so I also need to move that a bit to the right. So it's still 140, but I've realigned the endpoints of that dimension. Okay, just to make this a little bit easier for you to understand as well, I'm going to do a little bit of fill work with this. Yeah, I think, in fact, what I'm actually going to do here, let's just think this through. No, I'll just go for it straight away. Let's just see what happens here. First of all, I want to be clear here, because there's loads of lines going on. Let's be clear that this back rectangle, let's just zoom out a bit here, this back rectangle here is actually representing the MDF with the cedar veneer. So I'm going to select it, I'm going to go to fill, I'm going to go to textured fill, load texture. Let's have a see. I want to go to textures. This just defaults to this folder automatically. Let's go to wood board, and in here I've got some cedar board, and you'll see here the grains are already in the right direction, so that's fine. Let's just confirm that. And this actually looks like it is some kind of flooring, but it's just to give the general effect. Okay, now I want to then also highlight how this is going to be cut out of the cedar board. So let's select the actual profile here of the finished clock. Let's change that fill color, and I'm going to make this solid color white, because I want it so that this, at the moment it's transparent, I want to make it so it's filled in white so it blocks that cedar texture which is behind. Now notice at this point that the photo has, the outline of the photo has disappeared. So what I'm going to have to do here, because it's behind basically this white filled rectangle, I'm going to first of all select the white filled rectangle. I'm going to send that to back using this arrangement set of options. Send that to back. Now of course it's behind the cedar texture, so I'm going to select that cedar filled rectangle, send that to the back as well, and now hopefully you can see how my design relates to the cedar veneered MDF. So let's just now look at how I'm going to send this to the laser cutter and prototype this. Let's have a think. First of all, I want to select this shape, and this is going to be cut out of card. This is going to represent the external dimensions of my clock frame. So let's come to line color, and let's make that blue, which is our color for cutout. And then I'm going to make it so that these 4 M3 holes, 3mm diameter holes, I selected and shift selected the other 3, are going to be just engraved. So let's make those red. In fact, I'll make it the red here from these custom colors. So these are our default colors for laser engraving and cutting. Okay, and I also want to make sure that this photo frame is going to be engraved as well. So let's just come to line color red. Now notice that that only changes the external line color. To change the hatching color, I've got to go to fill. I've got to change the hatching color there to red. Now it's going to be interesting to see if that actually comes out on the laser cutter. I'm not, because it's a fill. Will it view that as a red line or as a red fill? I don't know. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen there. I've not done that before. We'll see. And then this circle here, I'm also just going to put line color there to red. So when I finish laser cutting this, I should have a clear idea as to how this is going to look as a physical product, at least in terms of its actual physical scale. And I'll also be able to put it onto this sheet of veneered MDF and then put my photo over the top and make sure things kind of map out correctly. So what I'll do is I'm going to pause the video at this point and then I'll laser cut it and then come back and show you what I've got. Okay, so I've laser cut this prototype in card, and here it is, right there. So you can see how the photograph fits on there. So remember, I am going to be trimming this off so that this white margin is removed. So that's why the actual 140mm height frame there for the photo is slightly smaller than the actual external proportions of the picture itself. So that looks great. That's where the clock's going to go. I've got the holes for the M3 bolts to go through, and you can see how it fits on the end of this sheet of cedar veneered MDF with a margin around the outside so that we get a nice clean edge and some of these little imperfections are removed. Now you'll notice here that actually these holes aren't engraved, they are actually cut out. So what I did here, if I just come back to 2D design, is having taken this to the laser cutter, I actually decided to select and then shift select these 4 little circular cutouts, 3mm diameter circles, and I changed the line color there to blue so they would actually cut out. And the other thing that I did, which might seem non-critical, but actually because I'm working from this top left corner, I actually find pretty important in terms of reducing waste, is actually selected all of this and I bought it in 5mm like that. Whoop, that was 10, excuse me. 5mm like that. And the final thing to say here is that when I put this, when I actually come to laser cut this, when I put this piece of MDF with the cedar veneer in the laser cutter, I will actually position it so that this piece of cedar is right up against the edge of the laser cutter table. In other words, it's right up against the edge here of our drawing area. So actually what I want to do here is just zoom out to see the whole thing. I'm going to, with a selection tool here, I'm going to select all of this and I want to move it up and left 5mm so that the cedar board actually is in the top left corner flush with the edge of the drawing area. Now it's quite difficult to do when you zoomed out, so I'll zoom in a little bit here, and also when I click and move this I'm going to be looking at my relative grid reference positioning here, so I'm going to move it up 5mm. So if I look down here, that's where I'm looking. I'm moving it up 5mm and left 5mm, and now you can see how that's going to snap into the corner. So actually I should have done that prior to actually going ahead. Excuse me a second. Prior to actually going ahead and laser cutting it. So now I'm feeling as if I've kind of optimized this design. Anyway, so that is looking really, really nice. In the next video, I'll move on and I'll start to think a little bit more about what's happening here with the actual clock face itself.